we really need to have good understanding of how to extract information we want from the big data, and we need to spend a lot of time on cleaning the data and validating the quality of the data. In here, I want to talk about some analytics that we can do with big data. So data analytics basically are methods that we can use to extract information from data. So here we have 3 types of analytics, and this does not only apply to big data. It can be applied to other small data, right? But these are just analytics, like general analytic method. So the first type is called descriptive. So what is descriptive? Basically, it asks this question of what has happened. So one example is that if we look at this COVID data, let's say the confirmed cases per day in New York State. So the descriptive analytics can be you calculate the daily average confirmed case. And you want to know the maximum, the minimum number of the daily confirmed case. So it's like you describe what has happened during a period of time. So this is called descriptive. It's like a sketching a picture of the situation. And the second type of analytic is called predictive. And we already have heard about this in our previous lectures. So predictive analytics basically ask this question, what could happen, right? So we utilize the historical information to predict the future situation. Okay, one example is that now we know how many daily cases of confirmed cases of COVID in New York State, and then we want to predict how many confirmed cases will there be tomorrow and a few days into the future, right? So that's called predictive analytics. And the third type is called prescriptive. And this type of analytics answer the question of what should we do? So it's like a doctor prescribing you a solution or medicine of how to deal with the situation. And when it comes to COVID, one example of this prescriptive analytics can be, okay, to minimize the damage of COVID on our welfare and also economics in general, what policies should be there, right? For example, there should be social distancing, people should wear masks. So these are the prescriptions that you can utilize to solve some problem. So basically, when we talk about data analytics, any method can be can fall into either of the 3 categories: descriptive, predictive, and prescriptive. Okay, and actually later on in our Python practice, we are going to study or learn about some descriptive analytics, and we are going to use the COVID data set because that's what's happening right now and it's relevant and the data is there, so that can be a very good practice. Yeah, Nick, I will get to that point later about regression. So here I list some detailed methods of performing these different types of analytics. So for descriptive analytics, we can generate the mean, right, median, and mode of this data set. And also we can calculate the standard deviation, variance, to understand the dispersion of the data, and also minimum, maximum. So these are the basics of analytics. And then for the okay, so here regression, Nick mentioned that. So regression is a very commonly used analytical method in practice as well as in academia. So what regression does is that it maps the relationship between the outcome and predictors or independent variables. So if we look at this diagram, let's think about this vertical axis. We call this y-axis. Let's think of this as the price of a car, okay? And then the x-axis, let's think of it as the size of the car. So the larger the size of your car, the more expensive it is, right? So this is a basic relationship between one variable and another variable. So, and then you put it in a function. So the dependent variable is the outcome. For example, in this case, it can be the price of the car, right? And then the independent variable is the explainer. For example, it's a size of your car, right? Or like the model of your car. If it's a newest model, then it's more expensive. So you basically map different predictors to predict your dependent variable. And if you got your degree in economics or finance, you must be very familiar with regression, right? But for other people who didn't know about regression, this is a very superficial explanation of what regression is. So there are 3 steps of doing basic regression. The first step is to identify what is the outcome that you want to predict, right? So another example can be GPA, right? Let's say you want to predict or explain GPA, and then that is the outcome. And then you want to identify what variables can affect that outcome. So we can list, okay, how many hours did you sleep every day, or your income, other things, right? And then you use the GPA as dependent variable and other variables in the independent variable, and create this linear relationship. And then if you can collect data, you can run this analysis and get the parameter values. If we have time, I will show you how to do this regression analysis. But this is a very easy introduction of what it is. So in accounting profession, people use regression analysis to predict revenue or costs, to estimate, to establish expectation of what a normal or expected revenue can be. Okay. We also have this analytic method called classification. So basically, in classification, people establish this classification tree or decision tree to predict which what is the outcome of an observation. For example, in the credit card fraudulent prediction, fraudulent behavior prediction, by analyzing the data, we can establish this decision tree of, okay, let's first look at the amount of the transaction. If it's below 500, then let's look at how many transactions were there in the previous day, and then look at the area code where this transaction happened, and then based on the historical data, we make inference on whether this transaction is fraudulent or legitimate. So this is classification. And another type is called clustering. So clustering is basically grouping observations into different clusters. So one example is that when we go to, let's say, ShopRite to buy products, right? So ShopRite can actually collect our information about, let's say the y-axis is the amount of money that we spend on each purchase, and then the x-axis can be on which day we visit the retailer, right? So then they can use this clustering method to group customers that behave in similar way. For example, the green clusters can be customers that spend large amount of money and arrive very early, right, in the store. But this is just a very superficial example of what clustering can do. Clustering has been used in marketing and also other practices to predict consumer behavior and better understanding and better targeting customers. And now auditors and accountants are also trying to use clustering method to identify outliers. So why can we use clustering to identify outliers? For example, we know, by running analysis on historical data, we know that the red cluster are legitimate transactions, right? That's from our, let's say, from our historical information. But now we find that, okay, there is a green cluster over there. It deviates from the legitimate ones, right? Or the normal groups. So the auditors may consider these green clusters as outlier and want to investigate these transactions. So clustering is also an emerging analytic method that is considered by accountants and auditors. As we mentioned, in big data, we have different variety of data, right? So we have textual information, audio, video, and not to mention that we have other types of data in social media. So, in big data analytics, we also mention this textual analysis or natural language processing. So basically, this is a technology or method that we can use to extract information from textual data. For example, from emails, blogs, online forums, call center logs. So the data, the textual analysis can be used to extract the theme of document. For example, now we have this application of classifying different news into politics topic, into sports topic or other topics. So it's an example of information summarization or extraction. And also textual analysis has been used in call centers to do this automatic question answering. So this is actually very common nowadays. Like if you want to search for, look for customer service, right? Usually you interact with the chat box, and that chat box usually has this natural language processing as the first screener to solve some basic issues. So that's one example of textual analysis. And also, textual analysis has been used to extract sentiments. So as I mentioned, some firms are using sentiment analysis to assess whether customers are happy about their products or they are unsatisfied with the products. And natural language processing is actually a pretty mature technology there. And then we have audio analytics. So yeah, by the name, we analyze the audio information. So there are basically two approaches to deal with audio. The first one is that we transcribe the audio into the logs, right? That means we first transform the audio into texts and then analyze the texts. The second approach is just analyzing the audio itself and analyze some phonetic features such as your tone, your punctuation, right? So it's like when you speak, you have these this kind of sounds. So the phonetic-based approach is analyzing these features in audio. And it has been proven to be effective in detecting fraud. So there are research that use audio analytics to analyze the tones of CEOs when they do the conference call. Like if the CEO are trying to hide something, they may appear to be extra confident. This is a very interesting finding because usually people think if you are hiding something, that means that you are lying, right? And when people are lying, you tend to be nervous. But that research finds that when the CEOs try to hide some fraudulent behaviors, they pretend to be more confident when they do the conference call. So that's an interesting finding. So that said, audio analytics can be used to identify some hidden patterns and can be utilized by auditors or accountants. And we also have video analytics. It's also very intuitive. We want to look at what information is in the video. And I know a professor in marketing, actually it's a professor who is in this IT department, and he did this seminar in our Rogers accounting our seminar like a few weeks ago, and he talked about how he's planning to utilize video analytics to apply this to marketing research. And we also have the social media analytics, and this is emergent because we know that there are many social media platforms, and people can utilize social media to do different types of analytics. So people can use LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram to analyze the social networks, or the influence by looking at whose tweets or whose posts have been retweeted or reposted many times. So there are many interesting analytics that use social media. So these are all examples of the big data analytics. So these are, for example, they use social media to detect community, to analyze social influence, link prediction.